Inside of us, there are two dogs, two wolves, and they're fighting for supremacy. So inside you, one is the initiator and one is the responding. Your whole life, you've been feeding and listening to the initiator. So your initiating wolf is strong, powerful, bulky, aggressive, because it's been fed well your whole life. And your responsive dog, your responsive wolf, has not been fed, has not been listened to. And so it's weak and feeble and meek and humble and doesn't even stand to fight. So when they two come to fight inside of you, this wolf's just gonna eat that wolf right up. And that's what's happening right now. So for all of us, whatever two wolves you're seeing, whether it's your mind and your intelligence, whether it's your intuition versus what your parents say, whether it's expectations of society versus your expectations of yourself, like whatever two wolves you have inside of you, the one that wins is the one you feed and the ones you have been feeding. Now, if you're at a point where you are and where I am and where all of us are in different scenarios of our life, where we're trying to shift and start feeding the other one, it's hard because the other one's just been fed more, it's stronger, it's able to push you, it's able to dictate you. And this is where detachment's so key, that detachment doesn't mean that you own nothing. Detachment means that nothing owns you. And most of us have become owned by our darker wolves. Most of us have become owned by the self that we don't want. So that conditioning has been drawn up. The only way to break it is to disrupt the pattern, to really break that. It has to be, and this is why I talk to people about immersive experiences. Like you meditating for 10 minutes a day on a headspace, that's wonderful and I recommend it, but that's not gonna shift this in a drastic way. Right. You are going to have to go and spend a week out in Joshua Tree with the shaman. You are going to have to take a break in Jerusalem, right? We were both in love with Jerusalem. Like instead of going on a holiday this year, you are gonna have to go on a 3-day intensive transformative retreat. And the reason why I'm saying all these different things is they all have different budgets. They're all available in different countries. You don't have to go to India and live with monks, right, but you have to do something, and it has to be immersive. Because when you get immersed in something, then you're giving something the power to break your pattern. Right. And I think the challenge is we're trying to solve it by a little thing every day, which is a good start to get us going. But if you're really serious about a massive shift in your life, wherever you're seeing that energy coming from for the right side, the responsive side, you need to go water that, you need to go feed it, you need to go give it energy. And that's what I think we find that, and that's where I think people struggle. They still want to go on their beach holiday. They're like, no, I can't give that up, I need that. Or this weekend, I still need to go and do up my house. And it's like, well, no, like, just imagine what would happen if this weekend you just went on a 3-day retreat that changed your life. Like imagine if you just gave that energy. Every morning I sit and I look at my intentions to do anything. So whether there's a new deal on the table or there's a speaking gig that I've been invited to do or whatever it may be. And in your life, it can be anything, whether you're starting a new business, you're writing a book, it may even just be an Instagram post for whatever it is. And I look at whatever my options are and I ask myself, which ones of these is a seed and which ones of these is a weed? Right. Because the incredible thing in our garden is that weeds end up looking like seeds and can confuse you. 100%. So often that thing that's giving you ego and pride and fame and control and power looks like it's amazing, right? But actually it's just strangling you. 100%. So every day what I'll do is I'll look at the garden of my life and I will try and unweed my garden. So I'll look at everyone and be like, why am I doing that? And ask myself, why am I doing that? If the answer is not love, compassion, empathy, growth, right, personal push, sacrifice, service, if the answer is the opposite, greed, money, power, fame, if those are my reasons, right, then I have to take that weed out. 100%. I have to pull it out, because if I don't pull it out, that weed's gonna keep growing. Right. And one day it's gonna be so big, right, that I wouldn't even have seen it. Our identity should start with unlearning everything that we think we know about ourselves. Okay, and how do we unlearn? So the best method of unlearning is this. First, and I'm gonna get really strategic and tactical because I think that people need to know what to do rather than a concept. The first thing you do is write down everything you currently are chasing in your life. Make a long list. Your goals, your dreams, your goals, your dreams, accomplishments. Anything that you're currently chasing and pursuing. Okay. Write them down. You can write down 3, you can write down 5, you can write down 10, depending on how ambitious you are. Second line, ask yourself, what is the source of that? Where did you get that idea? Did you get that idea from a TV show you saw? Did you get that idea from your parents? Did you get that idea from your mom and your dad, your sister, your cousin? Did you get that idea because your friend just got proposed to on Instagram? Did you get that idea because your friend just got promoted? Did you get that idea because you just broke up?
Right.
Or did you get that idea because you just feel it when you do it, that you feel alive?
So give me a specific example that you had when you were 15, 18 was like a goal or accomplishment that you were chasing and where it came from.
Absolutely. So my goal when I was young was to be an investment banker. And when I really asked myself, where did that come from? It came because in my community, small community in London, the most successful person financially was an investment banker. So I believed you had to be an investment banker to be successful.
Right.
So when I asked myself that question, where does that come from? It comes from society's version of success, not mine. And then the third thing you ask yourself is, well, then what is mine? What is coming from inside of me? And if you just do that 3-step process, now what you're doing is you're filtering out the noise and you're starting to listen to your voice. The thing is, you've got a voice inside of you, but it's quiet. It's like Jay, like take note of me, like Lewis, you know, and it's just like trying to get through, and the noise of everyone else's opinions is so loud. So this way you filter it. There's a thought that I love which says, you know who you are when no one's watching. Like what you do when no one's watching, that's who you are.
Yeah.
So we all know when we're alone whether we choose meditation or Netflix. Like we know when we're alone whether we choose, for a lot of people out there, whether they choose reading books and learning or pornography, right? You know when you're alone what you choose.
Yeah.
And I think that really helps you overcome your ego, because when we reflect on ourselves when no one's around, that's when we're truly uncovering who we are. One of the points, that, and I'm getting to the ego point, but and I loved what you just said now, that if you sat here and said, I have no ego, you can't say that. And I agree with the same for myself. If I sat here and said I had no ego, that would be a complete lie. And there's a beautiful story of Benjamin Franklin, that he had his 13 precepts before he died. He had 13 qualities that he wanted to attain in life before he passed away. They included things like integrity, simplicity, honesty, virtue, etc. So these were his 13 set. And at the end of his life, he was asked, which one did you not attain? And he said the 13th one. And they said, what was that? And he said, humility. And that, for me, almost means that he conquered it, because, you know, he was able to accept that he didn't conquer humility.
That's almost like how he ended it.
Yeah. And I was like, this is amazing, you know? And it's true story. And 13 Precepts are great. Read the book. It's there, Benjamin Franklin's book. And so the reason why I'm sharing that story is because the way you overcome your ego is to recognize that you're simply a channel or an instrument. When you recognize that you're an instrument, and whether you believe in the universe, whether you believe in power, whether you just believe in mentorship, you recognize that everything you're giving is because someone's given to you and someone's given to that person. And therefore you're becoming a vessel, an instrument, a vehicle for the greatest powers in the world, and just being a channel for that. And that allows you to feel two things. One thing is you feel liberated, because now it's no longer your burden. It's not like, oh my God, I've got to be the most amazing person in the world. It's not like, oh my God, it's all on me. You're actually like, wow, actually, yeah, I learned from that teacher and that teacher and that teacher and that teacher, and now I'm just a vessel for everything that I've gained, and I'm able to channel it and transfer it to others. So it liberates you from the pressure and the burden of like, oh my God, like everyone's expecting me to give the best talk of my life, like, you know, but when you realize that you're not, you're just a channel and you're just a transfer mechanism. And the second thing that it does is that it allows you, whenever your ego gets in the way and says, yeah, we're doing well, like I did that, you start recognizing and you get perspective and gratitude on the fact that, no, actually, I'm gonna pass this, whatever good's happening in my life, pass it to my teachers, pass it to the people that shared it with me. Because there is no one who is self-made. We talk about self-made millionaires. There is no one. That word shouldn't even exist. Yeah. Because none of us are self-made. I'm not self-made. You're not, like, and that's not a.
It's a cool term though.
It's a cool term.
But it's definitely not true.
Yeah, and it's not true. And it's not a diss. Like I'm not criticizing it. This is not like a slight dig at anyone for using the terminology at all. All I'm saying is just that if we all truly reflect, and I don't want anyone watching to think I have to be self-made, because if you have to be self-made, then you're gonna have to self-fall too, right? And everything will be self, and you'll fall on your own and you'll rise on your own. There are some times when I'm with a social media person who says something really useful for my roots, and there's sometimes when I'm with roots and they say something else. And there's a great story actually about when the Prime Minister of India, Modi, he visited Facebook, and Mark Zuckerberg interviewed him at Facebook at the headquarters. And Mark Zuckerberg told a story. He said that when he was struggling with the direction of Facebook in 2009, he went up to his mentor to ask a question. Now, Mark Zuckerberg's mentor happened to be Steve Jobs. And so he went up to Steve Jobs and he said, Steve, I'm struggling with the direction of Facebook. What do I do? And at that time, Steve Jobs is Steve Jobs. He could have said anything and it would have made sense. But, he could have said, go and meet a venture capitalist. He could have said, go and meet an investor. He could have said, go and meet a tech company. He could have said, I'll tell you what to do. Instead, he said, I think you need to go to India and spend some time in an ashram, a monastery in India with monks. He goes, when you do that, you'll find the answer of what you want to do. And to me, that is exactly why the people that are most successful in this world are successful, because they surround themselves with people who have differing beliefs. And MIT did a research study on this. They found that people who are more innovative and creative in an organization knew people who didn't know each other. So when you know people who all know each other, you end up with the same answer, the same belief, and confirmation bias exists, and you just keep building that echo chamber. Whereas if you've got two people who don't agree and you get a checking system, then you can trust your gut and go with what you believe. So I think I try and move away from having people around me. And it's not just yes men or yes women. It's not just about that. It's about building a circle of people, like you said, that want different things for you and knowing what they want for you. So when I'm with my mom, all my mom cares about is my health, right? My mom does not care how successful I am, how many videos I have, how many people I help, even that. And my mom will get over that. She's like, how's your health? Like, are you taking care of yourself? Are you sleeping well? Are you eating well? Like, that's my mom. And it's like, if I go and I measure everything most of that, that's wrong. But if I know that that's what my mom wants for me, that's beautiful. That's what I get from her. And she'll take care of that. And the same, everyone plays a different role in your life. Don't expect everyone to play the role you want, and don't expect everyone to play the same role. Recognize that everyone's playing their role in your life and let them play it. That's what makes a good movie. If everyone played the same role in a movie, it would be boring.
Very boring.
Right? If while you're writing your book, if while you're recording your podcast, if you're sitting there going, I hope this is going to be number one. This better be number one.
I hope I sell more copies
I hope I sell more copies than this person who's launching at the same time, because that's the only way. Well, guess what? Now the quality of your output right now has just dropped. Because guess what? You're now living 75% in the future and you're 25% right now. And guess what? This 25% is gonna define that future goal and result.
And your happiness.
And your happiness.
Whether you get the result or not.
Totally. Whereas for me, when I was writing my book, and of course I want my book to be a best-selling book. Of course I want my podcast to do well. Of course, we don't do anything for it to be lost. Like, no one does that. But what I do know is that when I'm creating, when I'm producing, when I'm writing, that's all I'm doing. See, the truth is that only 2% of the world's population can multitask. Now, the crazy thing is when—
Who are those 2%?
When people hear that, they think, I'm in that 2%. Like, everyone thinks that they're in that. But most of us are the 98%.
Yeah.
And the truth is, there is no such thing as multitasking. What it is fast switching between two tasks. So the quality is just dropping.
Because you cannot do two things at one time.
You cannot. No one genuinely can do two things at once.
I guess you could maybe like pat your head and do this at the same time.
Yeah.
But you can't do something productive at the same time, right?
Or creative. And so what I'm saying is that when you're sitting here going, this needs to be number one, you are reducing that thing's ability to be number one because it now doesn't have your full focus.
Right.
So that's the difference maker, that you can want to be number one, there's nothing wrong with that, but you can't keep comparing what number one is to someone else's goal too, because everyone's got a different trajectory. Like, there are some people that are kind of come in and do really well at one thing and you're going to do really well at another, and that's why competition has to first be in your space. Like, don't compete in a space that's not yours.
Right.
Because now you're just trying to be someone else again and you get lost in identity. Exactly.
Identity.
Play to your own element. Don't try and perform someone else's expertly. So in modern terminology, or how would I say that, is don't waste your time. Steve Jobs, don't waste your time trying to live someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma. Focus in on your own strengths, your own element, what you have to offer. Don't get lost in trying to become like someone else or pretend to be someone else. There's a beautiful, one of my favorite quotes by Einstein and then Steve Jobs again. Einstein said, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its whole life believing that it's stupid. And too many of us are fish trying to climb a tree. Too many of us are monkeys being taught how to swim. Too many of us are lions being taught to live like cats. We're not getting to live in our element. So my second piece of advice is live in that element that you've naturally been given. Don't try adopt another. You know, we've all got a special genius inside of us. It was Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs, this conversation. Steve Wozniak, for those who don't know, is the tech guy behind Apple. He practically invented the technology and the software and everything. So Steve Wozniak looked at Steve Jobs and he says, this is in Walter Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs. Steve Wozniak looks at Steve Jobs and he says, what do you even do? He said, you're not a coder, you're not a designer, you're not a marketer, and you're not an engineer. What do you even do? Imagine challenging Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs replies, he says, musicians play their instruments, I play the orchestra. That is the most deep understanding of one's role in life and not getting lost in other people's identities and perceptions of you. Steve Jobs knew that he wasn't a marketer, he wasn't an engineer, he wasn't a coder, so he hired all of those. But he played the orchestra, he brought it all together. And that's when you find confidence in your own role, you won't be envious of anyone else's. We were left on the streets for 30 days to fend for ourselves and to figure it out. That's it. You've got your clothes that you're wearing, there's no money, no food, no shelter, no nothing, figure it out. And day one, I'm like, okay, like, you know, maybe it's a joke, like maybe they're gonna come back at night and be like, no guys, you know. So I'm trying to figure out what it is. This is training mode. And it's really interesting what your mind and body does. So the first thing your mind and body does when you have nothing is you have fear. The first thing you feel is fear. And that we can all relate to in life. The first thing you feel when you all of a sudden feel that your plan and you have nothing organized and you have no structure and shelter and all of this stuff that we now rely on, you have fear. Now the fact that you're there on your own and you don't have a phone and you can't just call someone up and you don't know the city that you're in, your next thing is survival.
Right.
Fear leads to survival mode. So you're trying to find food from everywhere, you're trying to hoard it, you're trying to get it from everywhere, you're trying to keep it, you're trying to figure out like, how can I get lots of this so that I can take care of myself? And you start just becoming crazy almost. And it's funny because those two experiences are so similar to what you see in society today.
Yeah.
Fear breeds survival mode, which breeds greed. And hoarding and wanting to have
lack of abundance.
Lack of abundance, exactly. And so you do that in that scenario for like, remember this is a 30-day experiment, it's crazy. So you do that for like the first week. You do that for the first week where you're just trying to find anywhere, steal, look, etc. Not steal, trying not to steal, but like finding fruits off trees, whatever. You're just trying to do whatever you can, finding anywhere to sleep. And you're fending for yourself. It's all about you. The interesting thing that happens in week 2 is that you recognize that you really want to, when you make a difference in someone's life, they'll help you. So by week 2, you start recognizing, if I help villages, if I help this old lady, if I help this old man, if I serve the people around me, then they'll give it to me anyway. And we saw people inviting us into their homes, we saw people giving us food, we saw people cooking for us, just because we were helping people.
Wow.
And you start to see community, you start to see the value of collaboration, you start to see the value of energy exchange, you start to learn how your heart and soul leads to other people giving you their heart and soul. And you experience that. Now the interesting thing is that goes on for about 2 weeks and you think you've kind of mastered it.
Right.
And then the biggest challenge comes when this is what you're meant to grow to, and this is where you go beyond feeling good about serving and getting an exchange. And this is not spoke about as prominent today because I think we live in a world where people aren't self-loved and self-fueled enough to even consider this. And so we talk a lot about self-love today, which I highly believe in. Right. We talk a lot about non-judgment of yourself today, which I highly believe in. But this principle is beautiful. We recognized by the final week that actually we were far stronger and capable than a lot of people on the planet, a lot of people in the village, that were disabled, that couldn't see, that had lost their eyesight, that couldn't speak, that couldn't walk, they had broken limbs. And so by the end of it, we realized that when we served others and gained, we could actually give to those people because they didn't have, because they weren't young men like we were, they weren't able men like we were, they weren't skilled like we were. And that
So you can even go another level.
you could go another level. It wasn't just that you could take care of yourself, you could go another level. But those 3 stages of transformation show us exactly the 3 stages we need. The first is getting over your greed and ego. The second one is recognizing that you have value, and when you serve others, there's a value exchange. And the third, when you're feeling full and overflowing, you can then overflow to others. And so for me, that 30 days like has transformed my life ever since, because I was able to experience all of the experiences we experience today, but in heightened mode. Like I didn't know where I was gonna sleep or where I was gonna eat. And when you experience it at that extreme and you're able to work it out, now you have more perspective, you have more gratitude, you have more ability to navigate that emotion again.
Yeah.
And you recognize that it is an emotion. So for me, that was one of the most transformative things that I've ever done.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah, and it just really took me on an internal journey of overcoming fear, overcoming greed, and always recognizing that you can always go that one step above, and recognizing that you don't, as soon as you think you've figured it out, recognize that you haven't, and that there can be another level. And I think for all of us, that's a great reminder for me that when I think I have it figured out, that's the biggest reminder of there's still another level you've got to go.
I love that.
If you want another amazing video highlighting excellence in the Indian community, check it out right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.